The morning of February 24th, 2023, dawned with a biting chill, the kind that gnaws at bones and whispers secrets long buried beneath the Virginia frost. The call came through just as the sun's hesitant light cast eerie shadows across the Banfield residence, nestled in the sleepy suburb of Herndon. The dispatcher strained to decipher the muffled moans echoing through the line before it abruptly died, a ghostly prelude to horrors yet unrevealed. Minutes later, another call, a voice tense with adrenaline, claimed self-defense against an intruder. But what officers found inside was not a mere crime of passion. It was a tableau of betrayal, manipulation, and cold-blooded murder. The air inside the Banfield home was thick with the coppery scent of blood and the faint, lingering warmth of lives recently extinguished. A woman lay cruelly stabbed, gasping her final breaths. Nearby, a man's lifeless body marked the floor with a silent accusation. As investigators pieced together the tangled threads of deceit woven by those within, dark truths began to surface, each more unsettling than the last. The sun rose timidly over Herndon, Virginia, casting a pale light on the Banfield residence, a picture of suburban charm with its well-manicured lawns and the promise of a new day. But beneath the surface of this idyllic setting, the air was heavy with the promise of turmoil. The lingering chill of winter seeped into the bones of the house, but nothing could prepare this quiet neighborhood for the chilling events that would soon unfold within these walls. The tranquility of the morning was shattered when the first 911 call came through at precisely 7:40 a.m. The dispatcher strained to make sense of the garbled sounds, a fraught symphony of muffled moans and static, before the line went dead. It was a call that hinted at unspeakable horrors, a harbinger of the chaos that had taken root in this unsuspecting home. 15 minutes later, the phone lines crackled to life again. This time, the voice on the other end was clear but charged with adrenaline, a man's voice, claiming he had shot an intruder who had threatened his wife. But as officers arrived at the scene, the narrative of a simple home invasion began to unravel, each layer revealing a disturbing tableau of betrayal and bloodshed. Inside the Banfield home, the air was thick with the metallic tang of blood. The soft glow of the morning sun did little to dispel the grim scene that lay before the officers. In the master bedroom, Christine Banfield lay amidst a sea of crimson, her body marred by multiple stab wounds. Her eyes, once vibrant with life, now stared vacantly, whispering of dreams unfulfilled. Nearby, the lifeless form of Joseph Ryan told its own tragic story. A man fell by 2 gunshots, one to the head and another to the chest. His presence in the Banfield home was as shocking as it was perplexing. Why'd he been here? What had led to this violent encounter that left him cold and unseeing on the floor? As detectives combed the scene, the specter of death loomed large, casting a shadow over every room, every corner, every hidden nook. Each surface held secrets. Each shadow whispered of the twisted motivations that had driven the actors in this deadly drama. The Banfield family, once a portrait of suburban stability, was now a tangle of suspicion and deceit. Brendan Banfield, an IRS agent with years of service, was a man accustomed to unraveling financial mysteries. But it was his own life that now stood under scrutiny. His claim of self-defense, while plausible on the surface, was marred by inconsistencies and contradictions. Then there was Juliana Perez Magalhães, the Brazilian au pair who had entered the Banfield home as a caregiver, only to find herself enmeshed in a web of intrigue. Her story was one of opportunity and ambition, a young woman seeking a better life in America, only to be drawn into a nightmare. Her account of the morning's events was carefully laid out. A forgotten lunch, a curious return home, an unfamiliar car idling ominously in the driveway. The narrative she wove raised as many questions as it answered. Her observations of a stranger entering the home, her swift call to Brendan, and their joint entry into the house all suggested something more complex at play. Why had she returned so conveniently? Her instincts to shield the young child, to place her safely in the basement, spoke of a protective nature, But was it genuine or part of a larger deception? As the investigation deepened, the boundaries between victim and perpetrator, ally and adversary, began to blur. The Banfield home, once a sanctuary, had become a crucible of dark secrets and dangerous liaisons. Outside, the day continued its relentless march forward, the world oblivious to the tragedy that had unfolded in this corner of Herndon. But for those embroiled in the aftermath, time had splintered, each moment punctuated by the echoes of a question that would haunt them. How had love and loyalty transformed into such a deadly betrayal? The labyrinthine entanglement of truths, half-truths, and lies, the case began to unravel like an intricate tapestry undone by a single loose thread. The atmosphere within the investigation room was thick with the tension of 1,000 unspoken words, each detective piecing together a puzzle that seemed as elusive as capturing fog in their bare hands. The air was heavy, laden with the scent of stale coffee and the acrid tang of cigarette smoke clinging to the walls, a testament to the countless hours spent dissecting the lives of those entwined in this dark dance of deception. The sound of papers shuffling and the quiet, persistent hum of the overhead fluorescent lights underscored the solemnity of their task. The room was a crucible, holding the heat of scrutiny and the cold detachment required to sift through the detritus of human folly and malice. Juliana and Brendan sat across from the detectives, their eyes darting like trapped birds seeking escape, the weight of the investigation pressing down on them like a physical force. Juliana's fingers traced invisible patterns on the table, a nervous tick betraying her otherwise composed exterior. Brendan, on the other hand, maintained a stoic front, his gaze unwavering and inscrutable, a fortress guarding a complicated truth. These things never look like what they are, Detective Harris mused, his voice a low rumble that blended with the murmur of other voices in the precinct. People think they can stage a scene, play with perceptions, but blood doesn't lie. It whispers the truth to those willing to listen. The detectives leaned in, their eyes reflecting the glint of the stark overhead lighting. They were hunters closing in on their prey, the scent of answers tantalizingly close. The evidence lay in neat stacks before them, each piece a breadcrumb leading to the heart of the mystery. Yet within the sterile confines of the room, a palpable undercurrent of dread rippled like a shadow, hinting at deeper, darker motives lurking beneath the surface. Brendan's voice broke the silence, a rough edge betraying the turmoil he fought to contain. We did what we had to. Joseph Ryan was a threat. I couldn't let him hurt Christine. Yet as he spoke, the specter of doubt hovered over him, a silent witness to the inconsistencies that marred their story. Juliana's eyes flickered with emotion, fear, anger, perhaps guilt, and the room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in as her carefully constructed facade began to crack. Her voice, when it came, was a whisper barely audible over the scratch of pens on paper. We were trying to protect each other, but it's like everything got twisted. Detective Harris watched them both, his expression unreadable, the weight of years spent navigating the murky waters of crime and consequence etched in the lines of his face. Protection, he repeated, the word hanging in the air like a question. Or was it something else? Something that pushed you both into choices you can't take back. Outside, the world continued in its indifferent march, unaware of the drama unfolding within the precinct's walls. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the town, a reminder of the hidden depths that the investigation sought to illuminate. As the detectives pieced together the timeline, each revelation seemed to cast the story in a new light, the truth as fluid and intangible as quicksilver. The false promises of social media, the manipulation of blood evidence, all pointed to a tangled web of intentions gone horribly awry. It was a case that stripped bare the veneer of civility, exposing the raw, primal instincts that could drive one to the brink of madness. And within the suffocating confines of that room, the detectives knew they were closing in on the truth. But in the world of shadows and secrets, certainty was a luxury few could afford. The narrative was still unfolding, a tale of love and betrayal that demanded answers, yet left only more questions in its wake. The wind howled through the bare branches of the trees surrounding the Banfield residence, a haunting symphony that seemed to echo the turmoil within. Beneath the pale light of the moon, the house appeared both serene and ominous, keeping its secrets tucked away in its shadows, much like Juliana herself. To the casual observer, the place was nothing more than a quaint suburban home. But to the detectives on the case, it was the epicenter of a convoluted tale of passion, deceit, and murder. Inside the interrogation room, the air was thick with tension as Juliana sat across from Detective Hargrove, her eyes betraying nothing but a steely resolve. The fluorescent lights above cast a harsh glare, accentuating the lines of stress etched into her face. Yet, beneath her stoic exterior, there was an undercurrent of anxiety, a silent plea for understanding that seemed to linger in the air like an unspoken confession. Detective Hargrove leaned forward, his voice low and probing. "Juliana, you told us you left to take Christina's daughter to the zoo that morning. But the timing, it doesn't add up." His words hung in the air, a challenge wrapped in a question. Juliana's response was measured, her voice steady, almost rehearsed. "I was just trying to help. Christina asked for my help. I didn't know what would happen." But the detectives knew there was more to her story, layers of complexity that they hadn't yet unraveled. The discovery of her intimate relationship with Brendan had opened new lines of inquiry, each revelation more shocking than the last. The evidence suggested a narrative far removed from Juliana's protestations of innocence, a narrative steeped in betrayal and manipulation. As Hargrove pressed further, Juliana's facade began to crack, her eyes darting to the corners of the room as if searching for an escape. "Brendan said he loved me. We were going to start a new life, away from all of this," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper, tinged with desperation. The detectives exchanged a glance, sensing the weight of her words, each syllable peeling back another layer of the tangled web they were only beginning to understand. Outside, the wind intensified, rattling the windows as if to remind them of the storm that lay at the heart of this case. Meanwhile, in another part of the precinct, Brendan was undergoing his own ordeal. The interview room felt claustrophobic, the walls closing in with each passing second. Detective Sullivan sat across from him, his gaze unyielding, a master at reading the subtle cues of human behavior. "Brendan, we found the photos. The lingerie. You and Juliana wasn't just a fling, was it?" Sullivan's voice was calm but relentless, each question designed to chip away at Brendan's defenses. The room fell silent, the only sound the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock, a constant reminder of time slipping away. Brendan shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his eyes filled with a mixture of defiance and regret. "We didn't mean for any of this to happen," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. The detectives pressed on, aware that they were closing in on the truth. The purchase of the Glock pistol, the timing of events, all pointed to a calculated plan, one that had spiraled out of control with devastating consequences. As the narrative began to take shape, the detectives found themselves piecing together a puzzle, each fragment of evidence a step closer to unveiling the full extent of the tragedy. Outside, the storm raged on, mirroring the chaos within the precinct's walls. As dawn approached, the first light of day broke through the clouds, casting a pale glow over the town, a fragile reminder of hope amidst the darkness. Yet, for the detectives, the work had only just begun, each revelation a reminder of the complexity and unpredictability of human nature. In the end, the truth was a fragile thing, elusive and ever-changing, much like the shifting shadows that danced across the precinct floor. Rain that had begun as a gentle drizzle earlier in the evening now lashed angrily against the windows of the precinct, creating a relentless, drumming rhythm that underscored the tension in the air. Within the interrogation room, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation, each breath filled with a metallic tang of unease. The detectives exchanged knowing glances, their eyes reflecting the gravity of the revelations unfolding before them. Brendan Banfield and Juliana's decision to trade in their phones days before the incident was more than a simple upgrade. It was a deliberate move shrouded in the shadow of deceit. The timing could not have been more conspicuous, the new devices gleaming ominously as tokens of potential destruction of evidence. Investigators, seasoned in the art of deciphering the intentions behind seemingly innocuous actions, sensed the shift immediately. The phones, silent witnesses to countless conversations and plans, had been silenced forever. The chill of suspicion crept into the room as the detectives pieced together the timeline, each discovery a thread in a tapestry woven with intent. Their thoughts were mirrored in the storm outside, the tumultuous weather a fitting backdrop to the chaotic undercurrent of human depravity they were unraveling. As the night stretched on, the line between innocence and guilt blurred, the truth buried beneath layers of duplicity. Further scrutiny was demanded, and with Juliana's arrest, a strategy took form. A web of surveillance spun silently around her, poised to catch any slip of the tongue or unintended confession. The monotony of prison life was punctuated by clandestine recordings of her phone calls, each conversation a potential goldmine of incriminating evidence. Her voice, steady yet edged with a tremor of guarded fear, betrayed her inner turmoil. "I hope you were not just staying with me because you were afraid of me turning against you," she whispered, her words laced with a vulnerability that belied the cold calculation the detective suspected. Brendan's response, terse and commanding, echoed in the minds of those listening in. "Keep your mouth shut." His directive was the final, damning piece of evidence, a desperate attempt to control a narrative slipping through his fingers like sand. It was the battle cry of a man cornered, fighting to maintain a crumbling facade of innocence. September 2024 marked the crescendo of an 11-month symphony of deceit and revelation. Brendan Banfield's arrest was executed with the precision of a well-rehearsed performance. The quiet of the early morning was shattered by the echoing click of handcuffs, their metallic clink a stark reminder of the inescapable reality he now faced. The charges against him were heavy with gravity, aggravated murder, and the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, each word a hammer blow to his once respectable life. In the courtroom, the prosecutors meticulously dissected Brendan's actions on that fateful day in February. They painted a picture of premeditated malevolence, where even the mundane act of parking at a McDonald's became laden with sinister intent. The skip of a heartbeat, the tightening of a noose. Brendan's movements were scrutinized, every inconsistency highlighted under the harsh glare of judicial scrutiny. The peculiar nature of the 911 calls surfaced, casting a long shadow over the defendants. The silence during the first call, punctuated only by haunting moans, was a chilling enigma. Why had Juliana waited a full 15 minutes to request help? Why had the urgency felt so contrived? Each unanswered question lingered like a specter, haunting the prosecution's narrative. In the end, it was Brendan's mistakes, the gaps in his story, the flawed logic, the blinding arrogance, that tightened the noose around his neck. As the storm outside began to wane, leaving the town drenched in a pale, hesitant dawn, the truth emerged, stark and unyielding. It stood as a testament to the complex and often unfathomable nature of human intent, a beacon amidst the swirling chaos of justice and retribution. The arrest of Brendan Banfield unfolded like a scene from a noir thriller, cutting through the quiet hum of everyday life with the sharpness of a blade. It was a brisk November morning when the police cars descended upon the nondescript suburban street, their blue and red lights casting an eerie glow on the damp pavement. Neighbors peered from behind curtains, their breath fogging the window panes as they whispered about the man next door, now handcuffed and being read his rights. Brendan stood there, his face pale and expressionless, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling around him. His eyes betrayed a flicker of defiance, perhaps an echo of arrogance, as if he believed this was all some dreadful misunderstanding. The pursuit of justice was a path fraught with complexities and moral quandaries, weaving through a tapestry of deceit and calculated malice. Investigators worked tirelessly, piecing together events that seemed stitched with threads of manipulation and betrayal. Each new revelation added another layer to the already labyrinthine case. The discovery of the second weapon, the Glock that Juliana had been instructed to retrieve, was a critical piece of the puzzle. It was an enigma wrapped in contradictions. Why would Brendan, who had already incapacitated Joseph Ryan, require Juliana to fire another shot? This question gnawed at the prosecution, a splinter that refused to be dislodged. The prosecution painted Brendan as a puppeteer, orchestrating the entire macabre spectacle with chilling precision. The FetLife profile, conjured under the guise of Anastasia 9, was a masterstroke of deception. Through this digital masquerade, Brendan lured Joseph Ryan to their home, dangling promises cloaked in shadows. His motives were laid bare in court: a lust for freedom, a desire to sever the marital ties that bound him to Christine. Testimonies revealed a man who spoke of his wife's demise with a casual detachment, his words woven with an undercurrent of cold intent. As the trial loomed, the air in the courtroom was thick with anticipation. The gallery was packed, a sea of faces hungry for the unfolding drama. The room was a crucible of emotions, where the scales of justice hung precariously. Each side presented its narrative, a battle of wits and willpower. For the prosecution, it was a relentless pursuit of accountability, a quest to expose the calculated malice hidden beneath Brendan's composed exterior. The defense, on the other hand, sought to paint Brendan as a victim of circumstance, caught in a web spun by others. Juliana's plea agreement was a pivotal moment, a seismic shift in the dynamics of the case. Her cooperation was a lifeline thrown into the turbulent waters of the investigation. As she took the stand, the courtroom held its collective breath. Her testimony was a damning indictment of Brendan's actions, each word a nail in the coffin of his defense. She spoke of the manipulation, the coercion, and the intricate plans forged in the dark corners of their illicit affair. The trial was a theater of human drama, where the masks of deception were peeled away, revealing raw, unvarnished truth. Brendan sat at the defense table, his expression inscrutable, as if the gravity of his actions had yet to penetrate his consciousness. Outside, the world moved on, oblivious to the slow, deliberate march of justice within those walls. In the end, the verdict would be a reflection of society's collective conscience, a statement of what was right and just. The weight of responsibility rested heavily on the jury's shoulders, their decision a beacon for those seeking solace and closure. As the trial unfolded, it became clear that the quest for justice was not just about punishment, but about understanding the depths of human frailty and the capacity for redemption or ruin. In the dimly lit courtroom, shadows of remorse and consequence loomed large, enclosing Brendan and Juliana in their tightening grip. As the gavel's echo faded, justice, with its relentless resolve and chilling clarity, exposed their orchestrated deceit, offering a stark reminder that, in time, truth unmasks the most cunning pretenders.